Good evening, and thank you for attending. My name is Denise McKelvey, and I am the moderator for this evening's candidate debate. Before we begin, please silence all phones and electronic devices. Additionally, please refrain from any interruptions to the debate as it is being recorded for on-demand viewing and post-captioning services. The Citizens Clean Election Commission is the sponsor for this evening's event. The Clean Elections Act is a campaign finance reform and public education measure initiated by Arizona citizens and passed by voters in 1998. The Clean Elections Act was created to allow campaigns to be more issue-oriented and less negative. The system provides full funding for qualified candidates who participate voluntarily. The candidates agree to abide by the Clean Election Act and rules, which include contribution and spending limits, foregoing special interest money, as well as participating in commission debates. The candidates invited to participate tonight are in contested general elections. Contestants in uncontested general elections are not included in the debate process. For tonight's debate, questions have been prepared by Clean Elections based on a voter survey, as well as questions that have been submitted by the voters through the Clean Elections smartphone app. However, we encourage live audiences questions first. If you have questions, please print them clearly on the note cards you were given when you entered and hold them up. Our volunteer will pick up the cards and deliver them to me. If you need additional cards, just raise your hand. We do screen the questions for clarity to eliminate duplications, speeches, or personal attacks on candidates. Tonight's debate is scheduled for 1 hour, so we may not get to all your audience questions, but we will do our best. There is an independent timer who will see to it that the candidates have their allotted time to answer questions and will tell them when their time is up. As a courtesy to the other candidates, please respect the time limits. When the timer raises the stop sign, the moderator will stop the candidate. Tonight's debate includes 1-minute opening statements, a quick lightning round, then the first half of the debate begins with 2 minutes to answer audience questions. Each candidate will answer the same audience question, and we will rotate which candidate responds first. After all the candidates have responded to the question, the first responding candidate will be given an additional 30 seconds. In the second half of the debate, it will allow a different question per candidate with 1 minute to answer. If you have a question for a specific candidate, please include the candidate's name on the note card. Again, it will be considered during the second half of the debate. Then lastly, we will end with 1-minute closing statements. Again, we ask you to remain polite to all the candidates and give them a fair and uninterrupted hearing, no matter how strongly you may agree or disagree with what's being said. Tonight's participants are running for office in District 8. Ms. Barbara McGuire, Democrat, a Clean Elections candidate, is running for a seat in the Senate. Ms. Carmen Casillas is a Democrat, a Clean Elections candidate, running for a seat in the House. And Mr. David Cook, Republican, a traditional candidate, running for a seat in the House. The order in which the candidates will speak has been determined by alphabetical order by last name, starting with the Senate for opening comments, and will progress from that starting point. The order for the second half will be determined by reverse alphabetical order by last name, starting with the House. Ms. McGuire, will you start the opening remarks, please?
Thank you. Thank you, Clean Elections, and to the moderator and to the audience for taking time to come out and hear from us tonight. I'm Barbara McGuire, a lifelong district resident and your state senator, a third-generation Arizonan, daughter of a World War II veteran, married 45 years with children and grandchildren. I'm a proven, experienced, conscientious legislator who has worked tirelessly and fearlessly for our district. I'm a moderate and have proven my ability to work in a bipartisan manner to get things done. Both Republican and Democratic governors have signed my legislation. Your needs, issues, and our shared values in LD8 are what motivate me, not party agenda. I'm a high school graduate, small business owner, vice president chamber, Salvation Army unit director, served as your state representative, and on the Interagency Council on Long-Term Care, as well as many others. I want to thank all of you for being here tonight, and it's an honor for myself to attend and speak with you.
Thank you. Ms. Casillas.
Yes, thank you to Clean Elections for holding this debate. And I would also like to thank my opponent, David Cook, for showing up. I believe that it's important for all audiences to be able to see their candidates and to listen to them and hear what they have to say to give them the opportunity to make a solid vote. My name is Carmen Casillas. I am from Globe, Arizona. I am the only Democratic candidate running in the House seat. I was past Vice Mayor of Globe, past Councilwoman of Globe. I'm co-founder of the Boys and Girls Club of Globe. Am I already 30 seconds? A Victims Advocate of Globe. And I am honored to be here in front of you and to be able to share my views with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cook.
Thank you very much. My name is David Cook. I'm a rancher from Gila County. My wife's name is Diana, and we have two children. David Jr. is a senior in Miami High School. My daughter is a sophomore in Miami High School. I'm a rancher, not a politician. I would like to thank these two ladies for their service that they've done in the past as elected officials. I would also like to say that I will stand by the election results of whatever happens, right? Just so we're very clear on that. I want to thank all you all for being here tonight because you are dedicated and great spending your time to be here. Something you can't get back.
Thank you. We will now break the ice with a quick lightning round. Please answer with just one word. Ms. Casillas, CNN, Fox News, or MSNBC?
CNN.
Thank you. Mr. Cook, Netflix or Hulu?
Netflix.
Thank you. Ms. McGuire, Snapchat or Instagram?
Instagram.
Thank you. At this time, we will begin the portion of the debate where each candidate will answer the same question. The first audience question will start with Mr. Cook. Please tell us about your community service record.
Well, the community service record, I was the youngest president of the Gila County cattle growers in the cattle business. I've served as federal lands chairman for, I think, 8 years for the state of Arizona, and also I've been vice chairman and chairman of the Federal Lands Committee for the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. Meanwhile, I've served on the Chamber of Commerce board for around 10 years and also served on our Southern Gila County Economic Development Corporation for about 7 years in Gila County. I'm a third-degree Knight of Columbus, a Catholic, and we do good work. So that'd be about it.
Thank you. Our next question is the same for Ms. McGuire.
That's a very good question. Thank you for asking it. I have 27 years of community service experience through Salvation Army. I'm a unit extension director for several communities in southeastern Arizona. I have also served on multiple Chamber of Commerces, and I am a member of the Winkleman Natural Resource Conservation District, that's a mouthful, as well as a member of the Women's VFW Auxiliary. Well, it's now no longer called Women's, it's just called the VFW Auxiliary. So I have quite an extensive record of community service.
Thank you. Ms. Casillas.
Yes, thank you very much for asking that. I agree. Most of my entire life has been dedicated to community service. I started the Domestic Violence Victims Advocate Response Team before there were laws in place to help protect women and children from abuse. We were able to transport, to get them into shelters, to help them do orders of protection. So that is one of my proudest achievements in my history of community service. But as I said earlier, I am a co-founder of the Boys and Girls Club, founder of the Youth Academy for the City of Globe, and also I work probation for the high, as we call them, the high-risk probationers. And it was funny because we'd have to go clean yards for the elderly, and because I felt sorry for them, I was the one cleaning yards and they were the one supervising. But that's because I love doing that work. I've served on many boards in our community. Also, Relay for Life is huge for me. Again, I'm going to be a part of that this year. Foster care, my parents housed over 150 children in their homes. And I, too, also signed up to be a foster care parent. So service and families and children are my passion, and I hope to move those forward into this coming election when I am elected into the House seat for LD8.
Thank you. Mr. Cook, your 30-second response.
Well, Carmen's from my hometown. I got nothing to say except that what she said is true. We've done a lot of Boys and Girls Clubs, work together. One thing as a rancher, what's hard here is talk about yourself, right? Brag about yourself, right? The Boys and Girls Club is a wonderful organization. They do great work there. I know parents that are hardworking, that they have nowhere for the kids to go. They're allowed to go to their homework and get their stuff done. They have a great computer lab and stuff there because we've contributed. There's a plaque hanging on my wall that says that. So,
thank you. Ms. McGuire, question. What will you do specifically to improve education in Arizona?
The first thing I'll do is draft a bill to thoroughly and fully fund education in Arizona. Our kids are being shortchanged. We are giving huge tax credits to corporations, and we need to close or roll back those tax credits. We need to close the corporate tax loopholes, the corporate giveaways, because they are robbing the funding that could go to education, which would provide for our kids. We are below per pupil spending. I think we rank something like 48th or 49th in the nation. That's unacceptable. That's unacceptable. It's going to take us decades to catch these kids back up to where they need to be. It seems like since the late 80s, we've been on a steady decline when it comes to education for our children. That needs to stop. So I intend to introduce legislation that will fully fund and restore the unpaid inflationary funding that was cut into half by the negotiating process.
Thank you. Ms. Casillas.
Yes, could you repeat that again, please?
What will you specifically do to improve education in Arizona?
The first thing I would do is go and fight for the money that rightfully belongs in the schools. There is monies there now that should be in our school system, educating our kids, paying our teachers, and my passion and my fight has always been to get that money back. It's there. We should be doing that now. We shouldn't have to be jumping through hoops. Our teachers should not have to be accepting scraps for salaries. I know many that had to leave their homes and their families to get a job because they could not afford to work here. We need to bring our teachers back. They're awesome. They spend their own money out of their pocket because they're very passionate about what they do and they want to teach our kids. And we have to make sure that we're funding them and we're giving them the money that they well deserve and giving the kids what they need in our education system. It is there. I will stand up and I will fight for that money. That's going to be my first thing when it comes to education.
Thank you. Mr. Cook.
Education is the #1 issue in Legislative District number 8. I've been on a fast learning curve in the past month. I've been at a meeting with the governor and Mr. Crow at Arizona State University. The thing we're looking at today, I think, is we need all-day kindergarten. By the time students reach 3rd grade, those that have been in all-day kindergarten, their literacy rates far exceed those that are in half-day kindergarten. The problem is, how do you fund that? Because if you have all-day kindergarten, now all of a sudden that funding for an all-day student that is cut in half for half-day kindergarten now goes to a full day. What I've been looking at since I've been running for this office is I've been asked 100 times, who do you support for Speaker of the House? I support the person that is going to bring the budget process back down to the subcommittees, and the legislators can go through these items one by one and find out where the money is going today. 49% of our state budget goes towards education. I want to find out where that 49% is actually being spent. If you go to my Facebook on State House, you will see that I get kind of beat up on that about administrative costs, but that's fine. I've got big shoulders, I can take that. We need to find out where the money is going today that is being spent on education and make sure that it gets to the teachers in the classrooms and not eaten up in administrative cost.
Thank you. Ms. McGuire, your 30-second response?
Yes, thank you. I agree with Mr. Cook on some of his points. All early learning opportunities need to be implemented. First things first, as well as all-day universal kindergarten. There was a proposal on the table to fund education this last session without raising taxes. We have $1 billion surplus. I just got a report from the JLBC showing that we have a $13.4 million above forecast, enacted budget forecast that we have just received. I'd like to see that go to education. Hopefully it will. We need to prioritize our budget on need, not want, and we need education.
Thank you. Next question from Ms. Casillas. What is your position on Proposition 205? Are you voting for it? Why or why not?
My position on 205 is I am not voting on it. My reason being is because, as I said earlier, I have worked with high-risk kids in the probation department, and I have seen what drugs can do to an individual. I know that I spoke to many that said, it's not going to go any further than marijuana. I would beg to differ. I have seen kids that have gone from marijuana to life support before they graduate from high school. And so that is my reason. But I will say that I did sign the petition to get it on the ballot because I do believe that people have the right to make their decision based on their own thoughts and beliefs. But I strongly oppose 205, and I stand by that.
Thank you. Mr. Cook,
Yes.
same question.
I'm not voting for 205. I want to thank Carmen for not voting for it either. I think is it a horrible mistake. I do not like propositions because they are written by lawyers and small groups that have everlasting effects on our state, and the legislature and the people that are elected really can't change them when necessary. Here's why I'm voting against it. In Denver, the mayor says that now 50% of the babies born in Colorado test positive for marijuana. 50% of those kids. The cost that affected that state, I think they would change it if they had to do over again. The proposition is not written in the same language that it was written for the state of Colorado. If you live in a homeowners association, and this passes, in your neighborhood, the homeowners association will have no legal recourse, but 6 marijuana plants can be grown in the front yard, backyard, side of the yard, next to your house, on their property line, and a homeowners association has no legal recourse to remove those plants. Now, medical marijuana has been approved. There is a place for medical marijuana in my belief, and I think we have that. But for recreational drugs, the way the proposition is written, absolutely not. It has cost the state far more money than they'll ever promise for education. And that's the carrot they're using.
Ms. McGuire.
Thank you. Prop 205, I support the medical benefit of marijuana, as Mr. Cook does. I think that there's data that has proven that medical marijuana is very beneficial to folks that have eating disorders, that are veterans that have PTSD, people with glaucoma, and other medical issues, I'm sure, that are out there that I'm not recalling right off the top of my head. But I do support marijuana for medical use. My concern, too, is if we make marijuana a recreational drug, what's going to happen on our highways? I used to drive a school bus, and it terrifies me to think that someone can be out there and be high on the roads driving when we have school buses that are transporting kids to school, trying to get them there safely. I also, speaking of school buses, introduced legislation, seatbelt legislation. I intend to go back and introduce that legislation again, because for me it's all about the safety, the public safety of our roads. And I serve as ranking member on military affairs, technology, and public safety. So that's first and foremost. It's going to be up to the voters as to whether or not not it passes. I have no control over the vote of other people. But again, I only support medical marijuana, and I don't think recreational use is the way to go.
Thank you. Ms. Casillas, your 30-second response.
No, I would just like to thank both Senator McGuire and David Cook for also not supporting 205, because all the statements that were brought forward are major concerns, not just for us, but for many parents and some of the kids. It's amazing to me because I thought everybody would want it. But it's amazing to me because they do know the devastation. They've had friends that have had to be air-vac'd out and be placed on life support because marijuana has been a gateway drug. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Cook. Cost accounting is the effort to determine actual cost of a given service or product. How often should we cost account our K through 12 education system to determine the proper funding for our education system?
Well, I'm not sure how often we should do that. In the learning curve I spoke about, I went to a seminar the other day about Arizona school funding now. And so not knowing, you always want to get the smartest people, the closest people that you trust, and you take them with you. So when they invited me down there and they said, Mr. Cook, we want to come down and teach you how education is funded in our state, the first thing I went down to is I got my high school principal. And I went down, I talked to him, and I said, look, I'm going to go down here. They're going to give this education about how funding for rural schools are done. I don't want to just be listening to them. I want you to go with me so you can tell me, is this true? So the principal from a high school said, absolutely, I'd love to do that. So we sat side by side, we watched the funding go up on the board, and I would turn to him, I say, now, is that what our schools are getting? Yes, but no. Well, why no? Because they use a multiplying effect on those dollar amounts. So in fact, when the legislators think that that is as much money that's going to the school, in fact, it is not. And the problem such as in rural Arizona, we have 80-mile bus routes, not 18-mile bus routes for our children. The urban people don't understand these issues, and these are the things that we have to bring forward as a legislator representing rural Arizona, and those are things I will do. Thank you.
Ms. McGuire.
Yes. Well, I agree with some of what Mr. Cook said. However, I know that the base funding, the very basics, the base funding is good. I just went to an education seminar where they talked about school funding. The base is something that it's very complex. It has a lot of components to it, and if we pull from one to establish another, it's kind of like the building blocks. You take one down from the bottom, the tops fall. It's the layering on effect that we have that we need to look at. We need to prioritize what is a need, what is a want. We also need to prioritize paying our teachers above or equal to national average. We're paying way below that now. So we need to look at funding across the board. We need to equalize it. We need to not do it on a per pupil basis. We need to do it on a needs basis. There are schools in our district that don't have the materials that they need. They don't have the tablets. They're using plastic bags where they should be using material for some of their experimental work in science classes. I had the honor of Take Your Teacher or Take Your Legislator to School, participated in that event at 3 different schools, and I'm telling you, when teachers come and tell you that their take-home pay is $8.60 an hour, I don't know how they're doing it. I don't know how they're doing it. They deserve better, and our kids deserve better.
Thank you. Ms. Casillas.
Yes, thank you. I agree with what both Senator McGuire and David are saying, but I would also like to interject and say, I believe that we should be evaluating that funding for now at least every year for a 5-year period. My reason being is because the education that is being brought to our public schools is not high quality education. We need to see where those where the downfalls are so that we can build that up, because we're incarcerating instead of educating, and we need to figure out what is going wrong. Where do we need to fix that? What can we do? And I just become so very passionate about that because I believe that all children should have access to high-quality education, and that is not what's happening. We are 48th or 49th still in the state. That is unacceptable for our kids, and we need to do better. And I would say for the next 5 years, at least evaluate that, see where we're going so that we have, as the senator said, there is a base, but where are we going? Where do we need to change? What can we do better, because our kids deserve better? And also, when you have a high-quality education, you'll be able to bring jobs into our areas, because CEOs and presidents aren't going to want to come into an area where there's low-performing schools. So I believe that it's all wrapped together, and that's why I say we need to look at it at least for 5 years straight in a row to see where we're at and what needs to change. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cook, your 30-second response.
Local education begins at the first level of your local school boards. If you go to David Cook for State House, you'll see when I get beat up by somebody about me saying that I think it's around 42 is where we're ranked in the state, but when I talk about money, I get a lot of these people, I ask them, do you serve at your local school board? The answer is no. I said, well, think about doing that. You're so passionate about education. We need to make sure that good people are on our local school boards, entrusting that the money is getting there. One legislator cannot do it all. There's 90 champions for education down there at the legislature.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question for Ms. McGuire. What is your view of the American dream, and what should the role of government be in helping individuals achieve that dream?
Well, our government has safety net programs that are established by the people, for the people, of the people. We need to make sure, first and foremost, that those safety nets stay in place. Those aren't a handout. Those are a hand up so that people can live the American dream. Not everybody is blessed with a high-paying job or born into a wealthy family. They struggle and they work very hard, and sometimes they have times where it's very difficult and they're tough times. So those social programs that the government has to help those people, lift them up so they can live the American dream, get a good education, get a job to help pay for that education so that they can go on to be productive citizens and contribute to society. As Carmen said, CEOs and big businesses aren't going to come to our state. There's no evidence either of these tax breaks creating jobs for people so that they can live the American dream. So we need to roll back those corporate tax breaks and eliminate those corporate loopholes so that we can create more jobs and people can have the money, the good paying jobs, so that they can feed their kids, put food on the table, pay for an education, and move forward in order to achieve that dream.
Thank you. Ms. Casillas.
To me, the American dream is having a solid foundation within a family. We can have tons of money and not be happy. Families would be dispersed all over. But the American dream to me is to be able to have that solid family foundation and work together, working outwards to ensure that everyone within that realm or within that foundation is getting the education that they need, making sure that they're able to feed their kids. And we don't have to be CEOs or, being a janitor. As long as you're being the best that you can be, I believe that many people are happy with that. A lot of people do work hard and try to achieve, and there's that stress factor that comes in because they can't do it because businesses want people with education and they want degrees nowadays, and some people are not just able to get there. So to me, the American dream is just being happy in what you're doing. As I said, whether you're a janitor, whether you're a housekeeper, a mother, be the best that you can be, and to me, that is the American dream.
Thank you. Mr. Cook.
Thank you very much. The American dream for me personally is that my wife and I see that our two children go through school, K through 12, but then go on and receive their secondary education and their college education. I will be a happy man and pass from this earth when that happens at any time, right? That's my goal, because that's the only way that we as human beings can better ourselves is through educating our people. The only thing we leave behind in this world is our families and our lineage. And so as we educate the people down below us and our children, then we are leaving a better society for mankind in itself. As your state legislator, I'm going to be a strong rural voice. I face opposition in my own party that words like this: those people choose to live out there. Yes, but all of your water and all of your power comes from rural Arizona to all of your urban city. So when we talk about more money for education for rural Arizona because it costs more in rural Arizona, then we have a debate about who is going to pay for what. It's like in Sun City and those areas down there, people say, why should I pay higher taxes for education? Because I don't have any kids. Well, who paid for you, right? We have to keep our eye on the football, which government has a role. It's public safety and education, and it should be tied to those two things at all times.
Thank you. Ms. McGuire, your 30-second response.
Thank you. Bottom line, improve our education system in Arizona. We medicate, we incarcerate, and we educate. Prioritize education first.
Thank you. Now we will transition to the part of the debate where each candidate will receive a separate question with 1 minute to respond. Remember, you may still submit questions via note cards and direct them to a specific candidate. The first question is for Mr. Cook. What are your thoughts on the gun show loophole, which enables firearms to use gun shows without the seller having to conduct a background check on the purchaser?
Well, my thoughts is that's a legal transaction in today's society, and I've purchased guns at gun shows, and I've got guns of my own, and I don't think that anyone's Second Amendment rights should be infringed upon whatsoever.
Thank you. Ms. Casillas, your question? 1 in 4 children in Arizona are considered food insecure. What are your plans to alleviate hunger in our state and district?
Once again, when it comes down to budget time, we need to prioritize. We need to see where that money is going. I would like to see programs in schools to make sure that our kids are being fed, and I know that there are programs. I know that the Boys and Girls Club does lunches and snacks. So I believe that it's getting better, but I believe we need to do better. We need to, the schools especially need to see who's lacking, who do they feel has an issue, and then move forward from there and help that family. Many people start turning them into CPS and calling in the cops and a lot of things that hurts the child. We need to be able to help the families to do better so that they can help their children.
Thank you. Ms. McGuire, what is your position on the SNAP food stamp program?
I support that program very much so. Just as you said, 1 in every 3 children are being food deprived. This is America. This is a travesty. We're the bread basket of the world, and we can't even feed our own children? Unacceptable. I think we need to look at raising the qualifying level of income for those that are on SNAP so that we make sure that our kids get the nutrition that they need to be able to go to school, stay healthy, and learn. Without an adequate nutritional supply, they will not thrive. Some of them will not survive. It's unacceptable. We need to look at this, and we need to do better.
Thank you. Mr. Cook, if elected,
Yes,
what action do you propose the state of Arizona should take to address climate change?
Well, the Energy Committee will take a look at whatever legislation comes in. I believe that climate change, now I understand why the Republicans don't show up. I think climate change is still being debated. I personally think that the science is just like an accountant. You can find whatever you want. But I'd like to go back to one of the other things with my time. You know, dual enrollment is something that is huge in education, and I didn't have time to tell you about that. Along with the school lunch program, in Miami High School, the reason why I love that principle there is that if you are on reduced school lunches or on free lunches because of your family's income, they have dual enrollment with Grand Canyon University, and college is free. That reduces all of the barriers for any student that has the ability to be in college while in high school.
Thank you. Ms. Casillas, in general, what is your position regarding labor unions?
I strongly support labor unions. My father was in the union, and I will tell you that through strikes, the union is the one who got our family through the hard times. They fight for decent wages. They fight to make sure that their workers are safe on the jobs. So I 100% support labor unions.
Thank you. Ms. McGuire, what are your thoughts on whether the government should invest more in building or expanding the border fence with Mexico?
Well, I'm all for border security, always said that. But what I'm more about is border filtration. We need to keep out the criminal element. We need to keep out those people that are drug runners, those people that deal in human trafficking. Anyone that has committed a crime, a felony crime, should not be allowed to come into the United States. I am very much in support of filtering, doing a better job filtering our border, and there are a lot of other ways that we can do that. We have technology, they can fly drones. I don't think Mexico is going to pay to build a wall, folks. So I think that we need to look at other options, other opportunities, and we need to maybe help Mexico create jobs in their country that their citizens will want to work at. That way you won't see the influx coming over the border into the United States for jobs. So it's a good partnership for the United States and Mexico, as well as Canada and other countries, to sit down and talk about. And at a federal, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cook, what is your position about food stamp programs?
When you asked me that question, the first thing I thought about was the Democrat legislator over there in West Phoenix that was arrested for selling her food stamp cards for cash. And what it just tells me is when I hear these people about what a legislator's paid, if you're running for the money, you're in the wrong business here. Because our teachers make far less than what a state legislator makes in a lot of places. There's over 2,000 teacher positions that are open right now, and when those teacher positions can't be filled, they then go to accredited people that can also teach in class. It's a necessity. It's a help up, not a help out, and a lot of people need the help today.
Thank you. Ms. Casillas, what should the state of Arizona do regarding taxes on individuals?
Well, I believe that we need to place higher taxes on individuals who have an income. I'm not going to give levels because that it's just crazy, but who are CEOs, presidents, and look at our middle class individuals and see where they're at, to be able to give them some tax breaks, to be able to lift themselves up. And we're talking about food stamps, lift them up so that they are able to go out and be productive people and not be a burden to the state. As David said, it's a hand up and not a handout, and I believe that there should be a time limit as to when those are given out. So I believe we need to tax the rich, as we say it, and look at the middle class and look at helping them.
Thank you. Ms. McGuire, what are your thoughts regarding increasing the state's minimum wage?
I support increasing the state's minimum wage. You have a lot of people that are on social programs that it would help to get them off, which would lessen the burden of the state. So I support very much increasing the minimum wage. It will help lower income families especially a single mother with 4 kids. It will help her to better feed her children, to put food on the table, to buy clothes for school, to pay for the gas to get them there. Just a whole gamut of things that raising the minimum wage will help with. You know, there needs to be, by raising the minimum wage, I think it's a cost of living adjustment. They're not going to do it all at once. It's an adjustment over time. So I support that, and I think we can do a good job if we raise the minimum wage.
Thank you. Mr. Cook, what is your position regarding whether or not the United States should develop a set of guidelines so immigrants who entered this country illegally can be granted legal citizenship?
As the only person in agriculture that is running in the state legislature out of all 90 seats, we have a huge problem. We have a problem with not only our border security, but we have a huge problem with the labor force down for the agriculture producers in Yuma. Those people need to be at work from Mexico in the fields by 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning. They are having to stand in line at 2:30 in the morning to get through that process just so they can get to work. And these people go back home when they're done working. Agriculture is facing a huge labor problem that is part of this immigration. There's a lot of these one-liners that a lot of people on both sides use, but it's something that has got to be addressed.
Thank you. Ms. Casillas, if you were to be elected, what would be the first bill you would submit, and what would you consider your most important issue?
Once again, I continue going back to education, because to me that is the most important issue. Without the education, jobs do not come into our area, and then we're dealing with criminals, we're dealing with incarceration instead of education, which brings in the public safety realm of that. And so the first bill that I would look at introducing, though, in my 3 categories, which is education, jobs, and public safety, is I would look at the public safety issue to make sure that all of our officers are have all the tools necessary to keep our streets, our communities, and our families safe, because without that, I don't believe that there's much of anything else. So that would be the first thing that I would do, just because of all the issues that are going on with our officers. We need to ensure that they are properly taken care of. And I'm not saying that there's not some issues out there.
Thank you. Ms. McGuire, do you think by raising the minimum wage, it will hurt small businesses and cause a loss of jobs?
No, I don't. I was a small business owner. I can make adjustments for that. I can have my employees adjust their hours to accommodate. I think that if we raise the minimum wage, you're going to have more people with dollars in their pocket to spend at these businesses, which is going to increase these businesses' bottom lines. So no, I think that increasing the minimum wage will not cost people jobs. In the past, when we raised the minimum wage before, there was no job loss occurred as a result of that. So again, I do support raising the minimum wage, not in one huge leap, but in increments over time.
Thank you. Mr. Cook, what are your thoughts about the state of Arizona's efforts to expand the state's Medicaid healthcare program to include an additional 340,000 low-income Arizonans?
I think that was handled in the last legislative session by the politicians. My opinion is I elected the people to represent me in the district, and they voted the way they wanted to vote, and that's an issue that is behind us. I would like to touch on one of the things that in our district we have problems. We have towns that are so broke they can't afford police services 24 hours a day. In one of our towns in our district, the local hardware store won't even take their credit card anymore. The Heritage Fund money needs to be returned along with the HERF funds back to the original intent in the budget, and then we can look at the law enforcement and the other things. Like this building is a $13.5 million building. The Heritage Park over there was built with Heritage funds, and I think those Heritage funds need to be returned to where they came from.
Thank you. Ms. Casillas, what is your position toward the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, commonly referred to as Obamacare?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
What is your position towards Obamacare?
What is my position? Okay. Um, my position is I believe that it was a start. We had to start somewhere. And yes, there are many things that have to be changed, but at least we're going to be moving forward. And our kids are able to be on the parents' insurance up until the age of 26. Now that is something that is really, it really helps the parents when the children are going to college because, as we all know, the health care is expensive. And so, as I say that, I do know that there are many things that need to be changed in that. So instead of getting rid of it, we need to move forward and make some positive changes that will work for everyone.
Thank you. Ms. McGuire, what is your position on requiring police officers to wear body cameras?
That's a very good question. I'm glad you asked that. I have had law enforcement in my family for quite some time. My own husband has been deputized numerous times by a relative who was the chief of police, unbeknownst to me until late after the fact. But I think that body cameras would eliminate a lot of the issues that are being brought forward. If they had body cameras on, we would be able to dissect what happened step by step to validate the claim or invalidate the claim. I think we need to give law enforcement all the tools that they need to be able to do their job and keep our communities safe. I support it.
Thank you. Mr. Cook, what is your position regarding the federal government assigning control of Arizona's federal public lands to the state?
As the federal lands chairman, something we have to think about is that what do you do with all this land? Are you going to give it to the state lands department? Who's going to pay for that? The plan, what I've never heard of is we want the federal government to give the land back to the state. Who's going to manage it? Who's going to manage the grazing allotments out there? We have two grazing allotments. One's 12,000 acres. The other one's 72,000 acres. We don't have the money to buy it. So are we going to have the movie stars and the rich oil people and those people moving to rural Arizona to purchase this land? Is it going to be sold? I have not seen one plan from A to Z that has spelled out exactly how the process would work whatsoever.
Thank you. Ms. Casillas, please state why voters in your district should vote for you.
Yes, voters should vote for me to become your next House representative because I am passionate about education. I'm passionate about bringing jobs into our areas. As David said, we have areas in our district that they're devastated. And I would fight for that. I would fight for our kids. I will share that when it came to the vote on kids' care, when our kids needed a voice in the House, it was silence because our state representative walked out. I will stand with you, I will not walk out on you, and I will continue to fight for the rights of women, children, the youth, the elderly, and the disabled, because I am a strong voice, and I will help to make Arizona a better place for all our families to live.
Thank you. Ms. McGuire, do you support allowing Santan Valley residents to vote for incorporation? If so, what will you do to make that vote happen?
Okay, I think this stems from the fact that I did run legislation, and I did support legislation after that to allow them their right to vote, their right to self-determine. This wasn't a vote to incorporate, as you're asking. It was a vote, it was a right to take it to the vote of the people to see if they wanted to incorporate. Then they would still have to go back and go through all of the process, gather signatures, do everything, take it to the Board of Supervisors, do everything they're required to do to even get it on the ballot, to then vote on it. So I support a person's right to vote, even a community as large as Santan Valley, when another community that is smaller, a third of the size, is prohibiting them from doing so, and special legislation was carved by two other legislators at the Capitol, which carved out Pinal County and put us in this position in the first place. So my big thing is I believe in the right to vote, period.
Thank you. Mr. Cook, if you're elected, in the event of a budget shortfall, what is your philosophy and approach?
In the event of a budget shortfall, Well, the first thing we're going to do is protect rural Arizona. We're going to protect our water. We're going to protect our jobs. You know, everybody talks about jobs. That's the buzzword. We're going to bring jobs. We're going to bring jobs. Well, what we really need are the careers, because communities are built and sustained on careers. Families are raised on careers, and that's what we need to focus on. If the budget comes up, the other day I went over there, these people wanted $2 million that they were given in the state budget last year to do research on Alzheimer's. Well, everyone has a family member that has Alzheimer's, right? Well, now all of a sudden they want $6 million to do research on Alzheimer's. And when I turned around and I heard, well, not only did they get $2 million of state money, they wanted an additional $175,000 out of the general fund to manage the $2 million they got out of the state budget. To me, that kind of stuff just doesn't make sense. So there's a lot of things we could change and do different.
Thank you. Ms. Casillas, what is your position on voters having to provide identification in order to vote in Arizona elections?
My stance on that is that I do believe that we should be able to show some form of ID that we do, we can register here in the state of Arizona. I believe that all elections need to be fair. It doesn't matter what the outcome is, and that we don't have any outsiders coming in that could maybe change that vote. But I do believe that that we should have to show some form of ID when we are casting our ballot for our candidate.
Thank you. Ms. McGuire, what role should the state of Arizona play in developing clean energy sources?
Good question. I'm all about clean energy and development of clean energy. I think, though, that we need to put all of our energy sources to use, not just solar. I'm a big supporter of solar, but we still have coal, we still have wind, and then again the solar. I think that if we try to exclude all of them and only go to solar, that our grid will totally crumble. I look forward to the day when individual homes are off the grid and can be solar power or self-sustaining with utility production. But until then, I think that we need to use a combined approach, use nuclear, solar, wind, you name it, and take advantage of all of it while it's available to us.
Thank you. Our last set of questions for this evening, we'll start with Mr. Cook. If elected, what steps would you take to continue diversifying Arizona's economy, and what industries would you focus on?
Well, the focus to rural Arizona has to be this, and it was touched on by all three of us up here tonight, if you want to think about that for a minute. Businesses will not relocate their corporations or companies with good-paying jobs if they don't have a local school district that will educate their children. The children that go to school have to be educated workforce. How many people have seen more and more of these self-checkouts coming out into these stores, right? They are moving towards getting rid of the person and going to these machines. We have got to work. There is a committee, a rural development committee, that was at the state legislature last year, and when I found out about it, I said, how many hearings did you have in rural Arizona? And the answer I got was none. These are the kind of things that we are going to change.
Thank you. Ms. Casillas, what are your thoughts on the United States further restricting immigration?
My thoughts on that are what we need to do once again is protect the borders. We cannot allow criminals coming across that border, people who are feeding our kids heroin and once again putting them in bad situations. But I also believe that our system here has to be fixed. I know that I helped a gentleman trying to get his green card. 10 years later, it still had not gone through. So we need to be able to make it easier for the people who want to come over here and work, as David said, in the agricultural fields, because we do have people that can do the jobs that maybe we can't do. So once again, I think we need to look at our system here, keep out the criminals. How that's going to happen, I don't know. Everyone comes up with all these things, all these ideas, but they keep coming. And many times it's not just...
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. McGuire, what things have you done to bring money and jobs to LD8?
Well, I was privileged and honored to be able to talk to the president on 2 different occasions to encourage him to sign legislation to be able to bring Resolution Copper project and move it forward. Mr. McCain, Senator McCain, was able to get it in his defense budget so that the president could sign it. To be honest, I actually chewed the president out and was very angry because he didn't respond to the letter that I requested he assist us in bringing that project forward. I also single-handedly brought a budget amendment forward that brought Pinal County $500,000, as well as some of the other smaller counties $500,000 as well. So I'm always fighting, and I just championed the largest healthcare grant in the state of Arizona to the tune of $43.3 million. I look forward to going back to the legislature and doing that kind of work again to be able to benefit rural Arizona.
Thank you. We will now begin the closing statements. Mr. Cook, would you please start?
Thank you. There's a lot of work that's still left to be done. We appreciate the balanced budget, but the $135 million that is taken from the HERF funds to fund DPS needs to be returned back to HERF funds. The heritage funds need to be returned back to the heritage fund. They're talking about raising the gas tax. And I say before we raise any taxes, we need to put the funding mechanisms and the money back to what their original intents were, and then we'll have a full picture of what the state budget would actually look like, instead of playing the shell and Ponzi game to say we have a balanced budget. So when you think about HERF funds, now you're talking about the money that is going to go to our roads, our highways, and to our law enforcement and those things in rural Arizona. 30 seconds, okay. I just make sure it wasn't a stop sign. So what you've heard here tonight is some great ideas, and we are asking that out of 90 seats, not only will you have 90 representatives down there on the Senate and the state that are doing all these things, but agriculture is a $1.4 billion industry to the state of Arizona, and that's why I'm running. I'm running to represent LD8. I'm going to ride for the brand and the people here, and that I think agriculture needs one of those 90 seats, so I'm asking for one of those seats.
Thank you. Ms. Casillas.
Yes, I ran in 2014, and I'm back here again in 2016. And why is that? Because not much has changed. As a matter of fact, I believe things have gotten worse. As I said, we don't have representation in the House. As you can see here, it's obvious. When our kids, they needed a voice, our kids needed a voice, our representative walked. Things have to be done. We have to move forward, because without strong families, we do not have a strong Arizona. And in order, I am the only Democratic candidate running, and this is a little unprecedented, but I'm going to just add, we're both from Globe, even though we're on opposite sides of the aisle. I do believe, I know how hard he works. As a matter of fact, I called him to run. I didn't know he was going to run against me. But because we're both passionate about making things work, about making Arizona work. And I'm hoping that when you do cast your ballot, that you cast your ballot for myself, Carmen Casillas, and David Cook.
Thank you. Ms. McGuire.
Thank you. I'm running clean and will not be bought off by special interest whose only agenda is to take money from your pocketbooks to fill theirs at your expense. This is not a position for a person whose election is bought and paid for by dark special interest money to whom they will owe their vote. Our future and that of our children and grandchildren depend on the representation we receive. We cannot allow the state budget to continually be balanced on the backs of working families. With your help, I will continue working to keep government off our backs and out of our pocketbooks. Children's Action Alliance has given me a 100% rating on Who's for Kids, while giving my opponent a much lower rating. I've earned additional endorsements from AEA, NRA. In fact, I'm the only state Senate candidate endorsed by NRA to protect your Second Amendment rights. My motto has always been EAR, efficient, accountable, and responsive government. I ask for your continued support and your vote, and visit me at senatormcguire.com. God bless you, our district, and this great nation. Thank you.
Thank you. And to our candidates, thank you very much for coming to our forum and participating. And to our audience, thank you very much for attending and informing yourselves before you go out and vote. We encourage you to visit www.azcleanelections.gov, where you can find information on the upcoming elections, download the Clean Elections app, and learn about the candidates running for office. A link of this video will be submitted within that site in 72 hours. So you can watch this debate and other debates on that website. Please fill out the debate evaluation form you received as you entered and return it to one of our volunteers. Your feedback is important to the Commission, and it will help improve our future debates. Thank you again for coming tonight, and you are welcome to stay to speak directly to the candidates.